do not know, but I will see if I can figure something out real quick.
If you can, great. If you're not, people will realize we're not here. But
you could always rename Town of Barre to Be Back at 7. If you hit the button on the top right, the little blue button with the 3 dots, you can rename someone. So when you have the camera off, it'll just say that name. That might work.
Yeah, or even Town of Barre Back at 7.
How's that?
We have meaningful res.
Oh, I got to cut down the length of the audio.
Continue at 7 is probably fine. Perfect.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to can my video. I'll see you guys in another 25 minutes.
What? No. 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 already.
Hey, Matt.
Hello.
Couple more minutes. We just did a timeout until 7 since Todd wasn't coming. I figured we may as well start the meeting so people didn't come look for us and find out there was no one here. So,
Thank you.
couple more minutes. We'll get rolling. 4 panelists, and what do we got? 8 attendees? No, 3. Let's see.
Yeah. Claire has been in and out. She wasn't an attendee and then not and then back in, so.
All right. Let's see what's in the chat.
Do we know if Mr. Kenny is still on track for 7:05? He did mention in an email that it might have been a bit of a time crunch, and I didn't see a recent update about that.
I haven't heard anything else.
I guess if we haven't heard anything, it seems like it's a fair bet he'll be on time.
I will hope so. 1 minute till 7, so probably hear back from Bob soon.
Does the BCTV need to be a panelist in order to film, or do they stay as an attendee?
That's a good question. I don't know how it's done. You can just leave them as a panelist, I assume. Might be easier,
Okay.
and just keep them muted. I said I'm good as is, thank you. So they're good.
Okay, I'll leave them the way they are.
Yeah, so just keep an eye out for when Todd gets here. Invite him right in. Todd, pardon me. Evan gets here. It's not coming. I'll get him right in. I'll see if I can't read this intro spiel and manage to swap out who's attending the process. And you guys had a chance to look at the questions?
Yes.
If you want, we'll just take turns. You know, Matt, you want to go 1 and Dylan 2, and I'll do 3, then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and just go right through them.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So I did get a message that the email link is still not able to be open, so they have to log in through the MyTown Gov link. So I'm not sure if that is screwing up some of the people trying to get in.
Okay.
Oh, some of our interviewees, their email link wasn't working.
There was a message in the Zoom chat from somebody that had logged in as an attendee, just giving me a heads up that the link sent via email is not open and that they had to log in through the MyTown Gov link. So I'm not sure what was emailed out or how to correct that.
All right. Are they in the right email? Because there were 2 emails, I think, out. One was a link for tomorrow, one was for tonight. Make sure on the right link for the right day. Otherwise, I usually don't click the links. I just go down and put in the webinar ID.
Yeah, that was just what he said. This person sent me in a message, so I'm not sure.
All right. Well, we all made it in. That's what we needed. We'll just give a few minutes here and wait for Evan. This is part of having these guys the first day, as we've already interviewed all 3 of these candidates for tonight. So it's less crucial. It's not like we're going to hear from them for the first time. We have an idea what we're getting into.
Yep.
Try to get this thing so it's reasonably pictured.
So Evan Kenny is in. Would you like me to promote him up to panelist?
Please do.
Okay, he's a panelist.
And is Mike or Evan your Mike? What is in charge?
Hello, folks. How are you?
Good evening. How are you, Evan?
That was I had the same problem with Zoom, so thank you for mentioning that. I couldn't figure out how to get in.
It's always a fun game with this silly thing. All right, let me read the typical spiel here, and we'll start. Thank you for joining us today to interview for the interim administrator, for the town administrator position. Before we get started, I'll give you an overview of how today's interview will work. My name is Greg O'Sullivan. I'm chairman of the board. With me is Matt Urban and Dylan Clark, also on the board. Attending is our fire chief, Robert Rogalski, to run the meeting. And there are some panelists, some participants just viewing us online. We're broadcast live on the YouTube channel. It'll be later available on the public access station. As you know, we're looking for town administrator. I'm trying to go off of last reading here and see what pertains to it. What we've selected tonight is total of 9 questions, really 8 questions in a what do you have to ask us question. And I assume we'll just go ahead and have any follow-up questions as we go for these interview questions. With that, I'll turn it over to Matt Urban to have your first question.
Mr. Kinney, it's good to talk to you again.
You too.
The first question we'd like to ask is, we are sure that you did a great job of deal of research as a candidate for this position. Please give us your impressions of Barre. Tell us why you are a good fit for this community and what will you bring to this town may be lacking?
Well, Matt, I think actually during our last interview, you talked when I asked about, I asked all of you what the biggest issues facing Barre were, and you talked about how there's this sort of fine line between, you have different boards who are autonomous, who are working, trying to work together that might not always mesh with respect to development, especially where you're walking this fine line between the identity of the rural community and the reality that you need to grow. You need to sort of grow in order to have a sustainable tax base. And so I did that in Amesbury. And so I think, as much as there was a lot of talk last time we talked about how, Amesbury sounded like a much different kind of form of government. In some ways it is, but in many ways it's not. You were talking about, I think you were alluding to the planning board, Matt, and the zoning board, or these are boards that are generally autonomous by state law. So I had to deal with that too. But we managed to get that 200 million in new development through in the ground or in the pipeline in just 6 years. So I have a proven track record of doing it. Amesbury is not in outer space. It's very similar to Barre in more ways than you might think. And especially in that way, we didn't just get to, throw orders out at people. We had to work together with a lot of boards who have autonomous authority. And so it's not about, I don't have this illusion that the town administrator in Barre has everybody working for them. In fact, quite the opposite. Even if they do, you still want to work in a collaborative manner, not a, some kind of edict distributing manager. So that's just one example, I guess.
Okay. Dylan, you want to ask the next question?
Sure. Mr. Kinney, what are your personal core values? How are these instilled in you? And how have these influenced your work ethic and how you approach your responsibilities?
I think I touched on this a bit last time, so forgive me if I'm redundant tonight, but the responsibility of serving taxpayers, of being a steward for taxpayer dollars, is immense to me, and that's a core value to me. That's not a professional standard. That's not a talking point. That's really how I feel. That especially those on fixed incomes, no matter what community you go to, you're always going to find more people than you'd like to imagine struggling to afford to pay their property taxes. And to me, it's a high honor and an immense responsibility to be a steward for those tax dollars, to be a servant for those people. I'm working for you folks. If I'm selected, I'm working for you folks at the direction of the board. But ultimately, like I said this to you already, but I can't say it enough. I'm always focused on the community at large and the people we're serving, and the people who, like I said, especially the people who are scraping by year by year to afford the property tax bill. And so, frankly, that sort of drives my core values. It's why I'm in municipal government. It's why I love it, and it's why I work my tail off much more than is required, because I think those people deserve the very best of every single one of their public servants. And so if that doesn't speak to my core values, I'm not sure what does.
Well, thank you.
Very good. Well, my question sort of ties back into your first question, and it acknowledges that we have pretty good department heads, and we do have a lot of type A personalities because of that in town. And your position as administrator is to be a leader of those departments. They're equal, but they also do, in many manners, report to you. And how do you establish that leadership position? And how do you promote good and encourage good communication, especially if you're having difficulties with the department head?
I think you have to start by establishing trust. And I'm stealing this line from a mentor of mine, but the simplest way to do that is to do what you say you're going to do. So I mean, it starts with meeting with the department heads and asking them what they need, and genuinely listen to them. Let them have a venting session, whatever it is, and invite them to share with you what it is they need to do their jobs better. Because most people, the vast majority of people in government are always trying to do the right thing, and I'm absolutely sure that's true in Barre. So whether they on the org chart report to me or not, being a leader isn't about the organizational hierarchy. It's about being an effective, collaborative facilitator. And it's I said this last time. I think I do have the skill of knowing people, and I think that's what management is all about. Whether it's project management, staff management, or even just teamwork in general, you have to sort of understand the personalities you're dealing with. And there are times you're going to have conflict, but I think as long as you approach it, as long as I approach it with as much level-headedness as I can, and we all recognize that we're adults in the room, we usually work through problems, and we find solutions. And so that's frankly the least of my worries when it comes to this job. I actually enjoy that part of the problem solving with multiple personalities and multiple interests at the table. I think I have a track record of proving that I can work through those problems very effectively.
Very good. I really don't think that's going to be an issue here in town. Just one of those things to see how people handle the thought of being put in charge and what their intent is. Certainly don't want to give the impression we have any issues here, because I think our department heads get along very well.
Very good.
Matt, you're up again, sir.
How would you keep yourself informed, updated with the activities of your staff? And kind of the follow-up question I'll just put out right now, because it's really intermingled. How would you promote a positive work environment? So I think sometimes one approach can be fighting the other approach. So how do you balance that?
I think it actually, sorry to be redundant again, but I think it actually does start with building trust with folks, showing that, you're here to help them. You're going to make every effort to help department heads get what they need, within the direction of the board. And forgive me, what was the first part of your question, Matt, before the follow-up?
Well, how do you keep yourself informed of the activities of your staff? So, like, how do you kind of, are things happening the way you agreed that they would be happening?
So I would do this is simple. I don't know if it happens already, but one of the most effective ways to do that, I thought, was just have regular weekly meetings with your department heads and your key employees. We did those for 6 years straight in Amesbury, and it just made it just opened lines of communication. Nobody ever felt like we were out of reach. They knew they could always call us, they could always talk to us, and we were always going to be honest brokers. And like I said, we were going to do what we said we were going to do. So, and we would always give everybody a chance. You have to, when you're dealing with staff or another stakeholder, you have to make them feel like they're being listened to, and you need to actually mean it. And as long as you can create that environment, which I think I do naturally. I don't think that's I don't think you're going to have any trouble staying in touch with your staff and keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the organization.
I have no further questions, Greg.
Dylan.
Great. So along those lines, you just touched upon the staff communication. I'd like to know about your constituency communication. Could you describe what you believe the town administrator's role in the community would be, in particular, establishing communication and links within the community, and what your view of customer service might be, for lack of a better term?
No matter where you are in the organization, it's your number one job. Like I said earlier, it is your number one job to be a constituent constituent servant. Excuse me. I told that story last time about the World War II vet who came in to see me, and I thought I was busy and I had this big to-do list, and he comes in and I, like I said, I'll take that lesson with me for the rest of my life. It is the most important job of any municipal manager and any public servant throughout the organization. You serve those people first, and you folks know that best, right? Being elected to the Board of Selectmen in a fairly small town. Everybody's paying attention and they're not far away, right? So I think it's your number one job. You know, when I started in Amesbury, that was my primary job, was constituent service. So anytime a call came in regarding literally anything, I mean, I learned the organization from the bottom up doing that, because I fielded calls, anything from, you know, potholes to you know, as complex as they get in municipal government. And it always surprises me that it can keep getting more and more complex. But that's sort of the number one role of a town administrator, a mayor, a selectman. It's the number one job to be a constituent servant and realize those people come first.
Good. Go ahead.
Follow up real quick. What steps might you take to establish those links with community members and constituent groups?
Well, you reach out to you know, local social service providers in the region, chambers of commerce, you know, local businesses, and you know, a lot of what we did, sometimes we just reached out to people. We'd knock on doors of residents and say, you know, hey, I'm from the mayor's office. You know, let me know if you need anything. And that's sort of the best way when you go, and, you know, in the pandemic, it's a little different now, but, you know, when you can go direct to residents and to the community, you start to get a sense of what people are looking for pretty quickly. And I think you have to spend the time to talk to the community and engage the community. And that's actually one of my favorite parts of municipal services, is dealing with people. So,
Excellent.
All right. We'll talk some more about community in that case. You know, one of the things that you've heard us talk about and you've addressed is the need to increase the tax base, you know, without necessarily just burdening the homeowners and the local people here with more taxes, trying to find a way to get new revenues. Part of the charm of a town of Barre is the fact of what it is. It's a small town. We have a gorgeous common. You know, churches uptown. People like to walk their animals. There's a real community here. And there's a lot of people, most people here have a strong desire for that to not change. But at the same time, there are many people coming in with business ideas, as we've watched happen with marijuana and with the solar fields. And you know, people have a right to use the land, a right to business, and the town's trying to grow. How do you work a balance between the things that these people want with the desires of those to keep the community the same, and try to appease both sides? How do you think you're going to walk that tightrope?
Well, I think that the system is sort of brilliantly designed so that there's already a balance there. You know, you have to go through the planning board. You got to go through site plan review. Sometimes you got to go to ZBA. You know, you mentioned marijuana. When marijuana came in, how did we deal with it? We wrote some pretty lengthy, complex zoning to deal with it, right? And I'm not sure. I haven't seen your bill in Barre, but you know, there's ways to manage through things so you can still enable the market in commercial industrial ventures. Without totally transforming your community. You don't want to lose. No community wants to lose their identity. You know, it sounds like it's a little more contentious in Barre. In Amesbury, the taxes got so bad, fourth highest rate in the state, that everybody was in favor. You know, there was a pretty widespread consensus for commercial industrial growth that we needed it. So what we did is roll out an economic incentives package, and the primary aspect of that was the TIF program, tax increment financing, where it allowed. We actually ended up building a hotel on a site, and I know this is, you know, it's a little bit of a different scenario, but these sorts of mechanisms can still apply in Barre, where there's site constraints. You know, whether it's wetlands or whatever it is, there's upfront capital that needs to be invested before they're getting any revenue in. You can sort of ease that burden by you basically give them a little bit of a tax break in the front end of, you know, 5 to 10 years, and you're not giving anything away. You're still making money compared to a vacant piece of property, right? But you sort of ease it for them so they can sort of tier up their payments, and they can afford that upfront capital they need to meet, you know, local regulations and environmental regulations, et cetera, and sort of cover those site constraints. It allows growth in a targeted way. So it's, you know, whatever you folks decide is optimal growth for Barre, and whatever the community is telling you you can design programs to enable that. And I think we did it really successfully in Amesbury.
Okay. I'll turn it over to Matt then for his next question. I don't really have a follow-up to that.
Describe your experience advocating for municipality at the regional, state, federal level, and how that experience might be used in Barre to address major issues that we may be facing in the community in the next few years. One of the things that currently is on the plate is like expansion of the cable throughout our town, so we can get what would classify as today's higher speed internet to most homes. But for that example, could you go through a little bit of your experience advocating for municipality with upper level government agencies and trying to help resolve some issues for a town?
Yeah, we were on the phone all the time with our state rep, our state senator, we were fortunate to have a close relationship with the governor's office. We tried not to pull that string too many times, but we were always in close contact with the rep and the senator. Every year, we put together a list of our budget priorities. They were usually big ticket items, sort of like that, cable expansion you're talking about. Stuff, big ticket items that a municipality really can't afford to eat all at once, oftentimes. We worked a bunch of stuff into bond bills, state bond bills that ended up getting authorized. And the state, $3 million to the state is sort of like it's just another earmark, frankly. But in Amesbury, even, and especially in Barre, that's a lot of money for a community to eat. So those are great opportunities. You got to have those relationships. And when you really need something, you got to know that, the folks in Beacon Hill are going to pick up the phone when you call. And so, I'm very confident about that. Somebody mentioned, I don't remember which one of you it was, but you mentioned last time that folks in Beacon Hill often sort of forget that Barry's out there. And I'm pretty confident that won't happen if you select me. You have to stay in touch with your reps. You have to stay in touch with your senators. And we need to, you got to call, the corner office. And you just need to do whatever it is that needs to get done so that you can accomplish your goals. There's plenty of opportunities through the state level. Grants, I think we did 25 million plus in grants in those 6 years. It was close to 5 million, I think, in MassWorks grants for infrastructure. And those were just, massive helps. We couldn't have done that on our own. So you gotta use all the connections you have and all the relationships you have to do what's best for your community. And I think I have a track record of doing that too.
Good. Dylan.
Hey, as town administrator, how would you evaluate the current structure, effectiveness, and efficiencies of the various town departments? How would you approach making changes you believed were necessary? And how would you evaluate the services delivered to the town? And if you have any experience that you'd like to cite, please do. I know that's a mouthful, but
yeah, that's okay. I'll do my best. When it comes to evaluating, one of the first things, you can't start trying to change stuff as soon as you walk in the door. Like, it doesn't matter what job you're doing. You can't just walk in and try to shake things up and think you have answers, because you don't. And the best thing, what I would do is take, the first 3 to 6 months and really just learn as much as I can about the way the organization structures. The way the organization is structured. I'd look into the budgets. I'd track, probably bi-weekly expenses. I'd be looking, tracking how we're measuring up against the budget, asking questions of department heads, asking questions primarily of you folks. You guys are the voice for your community, so I would be looking for guidance from you guys to see what you think needs to be changed, and what's going well. But the first thing you got to do is get in order to evaluate. Is listen to the staff, listen to the board, and listen to the community about what they think can change and what they think can be better. With respect to measuring changes, we implemented a constituent services tracking system where we established a goal, which wasn't really a goal before. We tried to go way under it, but we had a goal, and it was pretty much a standard, and we rarely missed it. We would get back to residents within 24 hours. No excuses. And the way we measured it was, we get a call in the mayor's office, or you get a call in the town administrator's office, and maybe it's a DPW issue, maybe it's a fire department issue, maybe it's a police department issue. We would track in this database, which department it's going to, when the call came in, and how long it took to get resolved. So we had data to tell us, which departments needed to pick it up a little bit, and how effective their solutions were. So I think that's an example that's applicable to your question, Dylan. But that's sort of number one. And then I'd come to you folks with some recommendations, and we could talk about them. And other than that, I would look to you folks for guidance. But being there every day, I certainly wouldn't be shy about coming to you folks with proposals, and I certainly wouldn't take it personally if you decided not to go the way I recommended. That's sort of the way of the world. So I hope I answered your question, Dylan.
Yep, you did. Thank you.
Gentlemen, do any of you have anything else you'd like to ask before we move on and turn the floor over to Evan for a minute? Anything else off the cuff? We'll be ready to let him ask us questions again.
I have nothing more, Greg.
All right. Evan, your chance to ask us something again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask you folks, what do you expect and what do you want out of an ideal town administrator?
Everything. We've been tossing this around. There's you have your ideal of someone that's competent, understands what they have, has the education, has the experience, is a great supervisor with people, knows how to work their way through the state chains, and the odds of finding everything all at once that fits you perfectly are difficult, personality-wise. You don't know till you get there. But, we want someone that can fit in the town and understand the town, I think, and get along with our personnel. We don't have conflicts. I've been in now going into my 4th year, and we haven't had any major personnel conflicts come up to us that we need to resolve. That weren't handled by the administrator or the department heads, save for one. I think it's running smoothly, and I think the administrator is an important part of that. And aside from obviously wanting the town to function, finances to go well, and be able to have keep us informed of the day-to-day, I think that's really important. It's the managerial experience of the personnel and the ability to keep things running smoothly.
I would add everything that the chairman just listed. And in addition, I would like to see a candidate and a town administrator staying on top of the ever-changing news cycle, especially with technology advancing as fast as it is. The COVID throwing everything into a gray area. There's a lot is changing every day. So I really want to see somebody who is looking to see what's coming down the pipe and is both proactive and reactive to how things are changing, and especially the state budgets for schools and transportation. You follow along with what's happening on Beacon Hill, and so basically just someone who's paying attention to that happenings on the state level and how it's affecting our community, our school district, etc.
That's a yearly circus, isn't it? the cherry sheet numbers come out in the House, and then they go through Ways and Means, and you got to figure out circuit breaker and the offsets and Chapter 70. So I certainly understand that struggle. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things I think, as I view a town administrator, specifically to Barre, I mean, I think each town has their own concept of the role of a town administrator. But in this town, you can't just be a jack of all trades. You kind of need to be the professional of all trades. That doesn't mean you know everything, but you've got to maintain that professional manner, no matter who you're speaking to, in-house, out of house. I think that's almost the biggest number one right there. Because if you lose professionalism, you burn a bridge. And we're too small to not have bridges. I mean, we've got like, 2 people or 1.5 positions in the clerk's office, 3 people in the treasurer collector's office, 1 accountant, and a part-timer that helps maybe 5 hours a week at the busiest time. So there's a lot of bridges to small populations, and you burn one bridge, it's hard to bring them back. And I think level-headed. You've got to collect the data, you've got to be able to understand what's going on, but then you've got to be able to come back, and if you don't have the plan, you need to be able to let people know we're developing a plan. You've got to keep them working in the right direction. They've got to know that things are happening towards an end goal. So for me, you need to fill in the gaps. There are certain areas where our town does not have full-time or even part-time experts in certain things. And that's kind of where we need the town administrator to fill in that gap. And you've got to find that. So for me, it's be professional and fill in all the gaps. And I agree with the previous things that Greg and Dylan said, and even what you had said about that concept of service first. No matter who it is you're working with, you pretty much, if you approach it as if you're serving them, you're going to come off you're probably going to get the most out of that relationship you can get.
Well, thank you.
All right, we have just over a minute left. If you want to make any closing comments or a quick question, I give you a minute. It's up to you.
I would just say it's a pleasure talking with you folks again. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions for me or need any help getting in touch with my references, let me know. And otherwise, you know how to find me. I appreciate the opportunity.
I would expect, we try to hold off on calling references to our final decision time. I don't know if we'll come right down to one after this 2 days of interviews, or if we're going to maybe hold out. We haven't decided exactly how, because we have the interim again for a little bit, so we can have a little more discussion and see if we do one more round or what we're going to do, or maybe call some references before we make our final decision. But I give you the alert now. We may call them, probably sometime within the next week if we're going to do it. And I would think that might be prudent, but we haven't even discussed that. But I would think we'll probably, having the time, check references now before making our final decision after we have our interviews.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Anything you need, if I can help, let me know. No.
Thank you, Evan.
All right. Thank you, folks. Bye.
Right. So, Bob,
When's the next one scheduled?
The next one is scheduled for 7:40. So if you guys want to take a quick break, feel free. We've got 5 minutes to do to be on.
Yes. I'll take a quick break. I'll just, Sounds good. See you in a minute.
All right, we'll see everyone at 7:40. Sure, Dylan will get with us shortly here. Okay, Jessica's up and ready. We're just waiting on Dylan to come back. Jessica,
No problem.
we all made a short restroom break there. We had our 5 minutes. Or whatever we did. I didn't want to say. I called my mom, but that was just me. I've got issues going on, Matt, not dissimilar to your situation right now. So, my dad, so my mother was calling about trying to fill in on what's going on.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, is what it is, as we know. There we go. Okay, let me read my intro spiel. Thank you for joining us today to interview for the town administrative position for Barre. Before we get started, give you an overview of how we're going to work this today. My name is Greg O'Sullivan, chairman of the board. We have assistant chair Matt Urban and clerk Dylan Clark with us. Also attending is Bob Rogowski, fire chief, who's running the meeting for us. And we do have several people online as panelists, not participants, that are observing. Of course, this is broadcast on YouTube and will be on the public access station later. We've come up with basically 8 questions today, and our typical 9th question is if you have any of us. And we're allowing 30 minutes time for this, and we will begin with Selectman Urban.
Oh, Ms. Iser, I would just like to start off with a question that I guess is, it starts off with, we're sure you did a great deal of research as a candidate for this position, being in the interim. The follow-up here is, please give us your impressions of Barre. Tell us why you are a good fit for this community and what will you bring to this town that it may be lacking.
Thanks for that question. I have to say, over the past couple of weeks, as the interim town administrator here, I've learned that Barre is really that quintessential New England town that is kind of close to everywhere, being almost in the geographic center of the state. So I really think that the small town community that has been preserved over the years is really important. The attention and commitment to the town's history, I've really, as somebody who really enjoys history, I've really enjoyed that commitment from the residents to continue that preservation of history. And I'm really excited to get an opportunity to meet the Barre Historical Society and just get to know more residents. And they're kind of I'm under the assumption that a lot of residents in town are generations deep in Barre, and that's something that I can relate to, being from a small town as well. So I think that I can bring to Barre this commitment to keeping the small town community, to keeping that dedication to the history, while also moving in a direction. And this is similar to what's happening in Palmer right now. Is we have that kind of small town feel, but we are also trying to expand our tax base through industry, and a lot of our tax base that comes from business is industrial. So it's not something that you see, like when you come into the commons, into the center of town, you don't see these big box stores or anything. You see what has always been there. But what's kind of driving the tax base from the back are these industries that are quiet, and they're not bringing a lot of traffic into the center of town. So from my initial impressions, I think that would be a direction that I could see the town going, at least in the near future.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Greg.
Dylan, you're up.
Sure. Hi, Ms. Iser. Good evening. Can you tell us about your personal core values, what they are, and how they were instilled in you, and in what ways have they influenced your work ethic and how you approach your responsibilities.
Thanks, Dylan. So, my dad is a combat veteran. He served 20 years for the U.S. Army. So I grew up with a very military-based childhood. It was very strict. I had a list of commitments. I was, my mom also works for the Department of Veterans Affairs. So my family is committed to public service. I should also add that my dad's been on the fire department since he was 18. So growing up, public service has been at my core. And also with that background as a child of a military veteran, I have been always motivated, always, passionate about what I do, and always giving 110%. And those are some qualities that I will continue to bring to the town of Barre.
Excellent.
All right, as you're finding out, we have some pretty good department heads in our town. And, as I say, a lot of type A personalities. And really, part of the job of the administrator is a leadership position. You have to be able to lead and lead by example, bring these people together, and keep open lines of communications with all of them into department. And how do you plan to accomplish that? How is that going with you? You can actually say so far.
Sure, thank you. So, yes, you said it best. The department heads and really every employee in that works for Barre is incredible, just top notch. They care so much about the community, and they are also doing, really good work within their departments. And so, as a leader who's coming from outside of the community, I always think it's really important to lead from the back of the pack. Right, this is how the wolves do it. So the lead wolf is at the back of the pack, and he or she is just trying to make sure that everybody is kind of staying in line and doesn't let anybody fall behind. And so that's where I see myself as a leader, is that I am not a micromanager, and so I see the department heads as they're professionals and experts in their field. I'm not an expert in their work. And so I have a lot to learn from them. Absolutely. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I can learn so much from them, but I feel very confident that they are leading me in the right direction. But I can be cognizant of if something is wrong, if something's going astray. You can typically tell when something is off. A good leader will be able to tell based off of maybe its communication style changes, or body language, or if they're avoiding you or whatever. So those are some indicators on when something might be going wrong. That's not the impression that I've gotten at all at the town hall. I'm very proud to have started to develop some really good relationships with the department heads, including, the fire chief and the police chief. And I just think that they're incredible staff, and I have no qualms that it would be a difficult transition. I think it would be I think they're very willing and able to help bring a town administrator up to speed onto everything that the town needs.
Okay, thank you. Matt, your turn again, sir. Your mic's off, Matt.
Thank you, Greg. All right, Jessica. How will you keep yourself informed of the activities of your staff, and how will you promote a positive work environment?
So I have always been a very optimistic individual. I've always been known to be very energetic and just really somebody who can bring everybody together and help people see the best side of things. And so that's something that I really strive to do in a variety of different roles that I've had over the years, but especially now that I'm working as the interim town administrator. I have been doing weekly check-ins with employees. That this has been a process that has been in place since Heather, I believe Heather, the previous interim, she started it over Zoom where it was every week. They do a virtual check-in just because everybody was working from home. And prior to that, it's my understanding that Andrew did probably once every other week with staff meetings that were in person. So I would definitely continue that practice because from my impression, from what I've heard from employees, that was something that everybody really liked. And that was something that really brought everybody together. And so I would continue that. And I would try to, I'm a very active person. I run long distance and I do a lot of different activities. So I think I would try to incorporate some kind of maybe once or twice a year, some kind of outdoor activity that, everybody can kind of take part in and do some team leadership, team building there too.
Thank you.
Ellen,
Okay. Could you describe what you believe to be the town administrator's role in this community? And furthermore, how have you, I guess, and how would you establish communication and links to the community? What would your view of, let's say, customer service or constituency services be?
Sure. So the role of the town administrator is, I see it mostly as being a professional manager for day-to-day operations, right? So, that job is to make sure that everything behind the curtain is going smoothly. So everything that the public sees looks nice. And, but that being said, I understand, obviously, this is not any kind of political position. So I would never put myself in any way or form in a situation that would, force me to make any kind of political statement or anything like that. But I would want to be a very friendly face in the community. So that would mean, commitment to events outside of regular work hours. Like, for example, Chief Carbone was telling me about the Barre Scary event. So that would be something I would absolutely take part in and just be, a face in the community that somebody can trust and reach out to. I love constituent services. As an elected official, I, always am striving to connect with my residents in Palmer, and also as when I worked for Congressman Neal, that was my main job, was to take phone calls and emails every day and connect people with federal services. So I would just continue those practices of connecting with residents, and those experiences have also helped me develop skills of dealing with residents who are unhappy as well. Because I would say the majority of the time, if somebody's coming to the town administrator, they might not be happy with what's going on. And so I am, I am able to deal with, conflict resolution and trying to make it the best for the taxpayer.
Excellent. Thank you.
all right, we'll talk a little bit more about community. You understand the charm of Barre and the draw of that town. That's why people live here. They live here for what this town is. It is that rural community. It's the quintessential New England town. Churches in the common, pretty commons. And as you know, the select board's very interested in growing, having economic growth for the town, to hopefully, rather than burden the citizens with more taxes, alleviate some of that tax burden on the citizens. And that makes a real conflict between keeping the town as it is versus growth. And how do you satisfy the needs of both of those sides, the need for growth and the need for these desire for these citizens to keep the town as it is?
Yeah, thank you. So a master plan is going to be so essential to the answer for that question. I was actually just on a master plan meeting right before this interview, and that's the exact process that I'm going through in Palmer right now. And this is why I think that a master plan is so essential. You're going to combine the interests of the residents all residents, the residents that want to keep everything very small and the residents that want to alleviate some of their tax burden, and residents that just, maybe they want some more restaurants to go to or what have you. A master plan is going to be so essential as a framework to guiding the decisions that are made from here on out. This can't be a town hall decision. This can't just be a board of selectmen decision. And a master plan is the only way, in my opinion, to get a comprehensive, guide of what all of the residents want. And I think it's a pretty successful way of getting a lot of residents involved. And so there are some really great firms out there that do master plans. There are really great grants out there that can help pay for master plans, which is what we've done in Palmer. And it's, as I said in my last interview, it's a really fun process. And I would love to bring that to Barre. And I think it would be a great way to get to know the residents as well, really, through that process.
Okay, thank you. Matt, let's have another one from you.
Jessica, describe your experience advocating for a municipality at the regional, state, or federal levels, and how that experience might be used in Barre to address major issues that may be facing the community in the next few years.
So recently, as you know, my experience here in Barre, I've been working with the state representative and the state senator, both of them on the cable access project, since that was passed at town meeting, because I know how important it is right now that residents really need cable access. So I wanted to make sure that I at least started building the framework for that. I am lucky to have a good relationship with Senator Goby from my experience in Palmer. And she has been incredible, and so has the state representative's office in helping, start this framework for the town of Barre. So I'm excited for that. Also, when I was an intern for Congressman Neal, I was also able to help work with municipalities on getting some of their needs elevated at the federal level too. So I would have municipalities come to me or come to the congressman's office, and for example, there was a school that needed to be rebuilt, and they wanted some federal support to kind of get this ball rolling, and so I was able to help in that plan as well. So I kind of have an experience on both sides.
Thank you.
Dylan, last question.
Sure. How would you evaluate the current structure, effectiveness, and efficiencies of the various town departments as a prospective permanent town administrator, of course? And how would you evaluate the teams delivering services to the town? And do you have any examples of situations like this in prior employment or service positions?
Sure, thanks. So like I said, the departments, every single employee that works in town hall, they're amazing. I have looked through the most current audit that has occurred in 2019. And then I know we also have an audit coming up, so I'm looking forward to being involved in that process. And I am aware of some of the inefficiencies that are across the some of the departments, but I don't think they are egregious. I think they are manageable. I think there's something that really just involves communication. Just some maybe there's some communication styles that don't really match, and there's a communication style that has been forced for too long, and that needs to be reevaluated. And this is how we can change these processes. Maybe there has been some accountability issues that need to be addressed, and those are things that I think that I am going to be able to manage without necessarily like burning any bridges. I want to get buy-in from the employees 100%. I wouldn't even consider it to be close that I have that buy-in yet, because I've only been here for 2.5 weeks. I can't expect anybody to really truly buy into someone in 2.5 weeks. But I still want to really just build those communication skills up, get that buy-in, and then work from there on, fixing some of the things that need to be addressed in the audit. And I think, making sure that we have a good audit is obviously really important at the state level. So that's something that I would look forward to as a permanent administrator.
Thank you.
Okay. We are to the end of our list of questions for you, so we'll give you the opportunity once again. And now that you had a couple, probably kick it around and think about it, what would you like to ask the board?
Thanks. So going back to that communication, I have noticed that the communication style that I'm typically used to isn't always necessarily going to be the same communication style that everybody else is used to. And so mainly when I'm talking to you as the board, what communication style, how would you like to see the town administrator's relationship with you? How would you like that to look? And please include something about, communication style in that answer.
Sure. Anybody want to go first this? You want me to start and you guys think about it? I'll do that. Clearly, when the board makes any decisions, it's done an open meeting, and we're clear with our assignments and our tasks and our votes by literally voting on things. And we try to be very clear as we leave our meetings what we expect you to do on behalf of the board. Outside of that, the three of us operate as individuals, still as selectmen, and we field questions from people in town, and we look into things that we may have that we want to bring to the board, or we're looking into bringing to the board and trying to get more information on. So you'll often be tasked in some way, and I won't speak for them, but by myself, via phone call or a text message or an email, or something that I'd like you to look into. And the goal of that is to gather more information that I may or may decide not to bring to the board, depending on what we get out of it. But there will be individual tasks from the selectmen as we go. Certainly expected things that you need to do for us, as you are our full-time contact at the office. And we can't have any interaction with one another. So you're not going to find us saying, well, poll these guys and see what they think. You're not going to get that. But you're going to hear things, something I'm looking to do, and that information will come up at a meeting later. And I'm sure, I don't know how they interact with the administrator personally, but I would assume similar. Matt, you want to go, or Dylan, whoever's ready?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I mean, when it comes to communication, I think both of them kind of gave the gist of they spoke their mind, and I didn't have a lot to say differently. But for me, because of my type of day, if it's something that I can get to by the end of the day, I'm fine with the emails. I'm pretty quick with that. If it's something you need somebody's attention right away, the texts work pretty good, because I catch that on my phone right away, and it's like, oh, even if the text just says, please see your email, at least it gets my attention to something you need right away. So for me, those two methods work pretty good. And as hopefully COVID moves into our past, more face-to-face stuff I'm sure will happen. We'll have meetings where we're just discussing things, and similarly, phone calls also are fine. I'm open to most, but when it comes to like things that we really want to just kind of make sure are happening, the emails are much better for me to have a reference back to. Just to be, oh, right, this is exactly what Jessica thought she needed from me, or this is the question she was asking about what I needed of her, or similarly, how are we coordinating meetings? Emails about meetings generally, I think, are fine with the initial to the group like we've been doing. And generally, a response about meeting times and dates to the group isn't a big deal. It's just staying away from the content of an agenda item. And I think the board does a good job catching ourselves on that and trying not to do that. But I also don't see a problem where a town administrator might step in and say, you know what? Let's stop the talk here because we just realized somebody crossed the line, and you don't have to tell the whole board. You can go to the individual or something, but I think we're pretty good at that, but that's also why email's not bad because it is a record. So if we made that mistake, it's on record. We can step up to the plate and say, yeah, we made that mistake, but we're resolving it. We're bringing it to a public meeting and we're letting everybody know what occurred. So for me, sometimes that's a good way of doing it because phone calls and face-to-face meetings that end up including more than just myself and the town administrator can get dicey just based on a perception. And I'd rather not get lost in too much perception on things like that. But that's all I have to add.
I don't have much more to add. I feel like Greg and Matt really went over a lot of the things that we all need in the communication department to and from the town administrator. I'd like to say from my own perspective, I always appreciate a weekly or bi-weekly check-in call just to discuss some things and have follow-up questions that don't necessarily need to be addressed via email or a meeting, just for my own reference. And otherwise, just the more communication, the better. And so far, I think that we've gotten along well. And yeah, I have nothing more to add.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say that yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity, and I think that over the past couple of weeks, I've always understood theoretically what a open town meeting form of government was, but really experiencing it now, I truly understand how different it is from the city form of government that I've been used to. So there's just some procedural things that I'm trying to adjust, and I just want to understand how best to serve you guys and to make sure that I'm communicating with you, because I don't want to make you, feel like you're disconnected in any way, but I also don't want to, obviously I understand the open meeting laws. I don't, I would never want to cross that line. And I'm very careful about not doing that, but I'm just want to kind of make it more clear, on what that style should look like on working with you guys.
Sure. I would just clarify too, I don't have my email access unless I'm home on the town's tablet, so you need to reach me during the day. Gotta be on phone, via text or phone call. I prefer text initially, because often I'm into things I can't call. But yeah, as far as the open meeting laws, you can have discussion with, Matt, you're muted, I don't know if you're talking to us. You can have a discussion with any selectman you want. That doesn't violate votes. We can't communicate, and we can't get into a dialogue online other than scheduling a meeting. Really.
Right.
So that's all.
Okay, that's good to know about your limited email access during the day.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything before we close the meeting? No. Matt, you're still muted, but
I'm good.
okay. Jessica, thank you very much.
No, thank you guys.
We'll talk to you.
Good night.
I'm sure. Guys, that's an appropriate motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
Hearing a motion, a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Dylan Clark, aye.
Matt Urban, in favor.
Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Chief.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Bob.
Good night, everybody.